May 5, 1968. In the sweltering Mekong Delta, a young soldier uncovers a weapon hidden beneath a village floor. But what he carries is not just an RPG. It's the weight of a war that steals childhood, silences innocence, and leaves behind scars no metal can heal. It was May 5, 1968, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and smoke. For the men of Co., a 2nd Battalion, 47th Infantry, 3rd Brigade, the war in the Mekong Delta was a constant, humid grind. Sergeant Miller, a lanky kid from Ohio with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, wiped sweat from his brow with the back of a gloved hand. The mopping up operation south of the Y Bridge and the Kindoi Canal was in its final stages, and every house-to-house search felt like a roll of the dice. They moved in pairs, their boots squelching in the mud. The village was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that made your skin crawl. Inside a small thatched hut, PFC Ramirez was methodically checking under a woven mat when he froze. His eyes widened and he motioned to Miller. Tucked into the dirt floor beneath a loose wooden plank was a rocket-propelled grenade. It was a Soviet-made RPG-2, sleek and menacing, the kind that had torn apart armored personnel, carriers, and shattered the peace of countless operations. Miller's heart hammered against his ribs. He knew what these things could do. He carefully, gingerly picked it up, feeling the cool metal in his hands. It was a strange kind of trophy, a symbol of the unseen enemy that hid in plain sight. As he emerged from the hut, the weight of the weapon felt like a physical manifestation of the war itself. It was the weight of a family's lost home, of a child's terror, of the ever-present threat that lurked beneath the surface of this seemingly tranquil village. He held the RPG a little away from his body as he carried it, as if its very presence was a danger. The other soldiers gave it a wide berth, their eyes flicking from the weapon to Miller's face. He could see their relief that it wasn't them who found it, but also a shared understanding. This was their reality. Finding an RPG during a house-to-house search wasn't a triumph. It was a grim reminder that even in final mopping-up operations, the enemy was always there, just waiting. Miller's squad continued their sweep, the captured RPG a heavy, silent passenger in his arms. The initial tension had given way to a quiet, weary determination. The sun, now high in the sky, beat down on them, turning the humid air into a suffocating blanket. The smell of the village, a mix of wood smoke, mud, and something vaguely metallic, was cloying. As they approached the edge of the village, a small boy, no older than 5, darted from behind a house. He held a wooden toy, a crude airplane, and his eyes, wide and dark, fixed on the weapon Miller carried. The child's mother, a woman with a face etched by worry and hard labor, rushed out and pulled him back, a hissed reprimand in Vietnamese. She didn't look at Miller, but at the grenade, her expression a mixture of fear and something akin to disgust. The silent encounter hung in the air, a stark reminder of the war's insidious nature. This was more than just a military operation. It was an intrusion into a way of life, an act of violence that touched even the most innocent. The RPG in Miller's arms suddenly felt less like a trophy and more like a stolen piece of the boy's childhood. It was a physical representation of the fear that had become a constant in this family's life. They reached the paddy fields that marked the end of the village. The open space offered little cover, and the men spread out, their rifles at the ready. A helicopter, a Huey, thundered overhead, its rotors beating the air into a deafening roar. As it passed, a voice crackled over the radio, ordering them to rendezvous at the collection point. Miller looked at the RPG. It felt cold and lifeless now, a dead piece of metal. He had a sudden urge to toss it into the paddy, to let it sink into the mud and be forgotten. But he couldn't. It was evidence, a record of what they had found, of the war they were fighting. He started walking towards the rendezvous point, the RPG still cradled in his arms. The silence of the village was replaced by the low thrum of the jungle, the buzzing of insects and the distant chatter of gunfire. The war was never truly over. It just shifted locations, leaving behind its grim trophies and a profound silence in its wake. Miller arrived at the collection point, a makeshift command post set up in a cleared-out rice paddy. The air was a chaotic symphony of radio chatter, the clatter of gear, and the low rumble of generators. He found his platoon sergeant, a grizzled veteran named Sergeant Davis, who took one look at the RPG and grunted. Looks like a nice souvenir, Miller, Davis said, his tone dry. Careful you don't put a hole in the sky with that thing. Miller handed the RPG over to an ordnance specialist, a young soldier with a nervous tic. The specialist took it with the kind of reverence one reserves for a coiled snake, tagging it and placing it with other captured weapons. Miller felt a strange sense of relief, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders, even though his arms still ached. The squad gathered, their faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion. They were the lucky ones. The sounds of fighting still echoed in the distance, a constant reminder that for every house they cleared, another unit was in a firefight. They sat in a circle, sharing sea rations in the silence of men who have seen too much. Ramirez, the young PFC who had found the RPG, was unusually quiet. He stared at his boots, his mind replaying the moment of discovery. "Sergeant," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper, "did you see that kid? The one with the toy plane?" Miller nodded. "Yeah, I saw him." "He didn't even cry," Ramirez said, his voice full of a new, unsettling understanding. "He just looked, like he's seen a million of those things before." "He probably has, son," Davis said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. "That's how it is here, they grow up fast." The words hung in the air, a stark, uncomfortable truth. It wasn't about the captured RPG anymore. It was about what it represented. It was about the lost innocence, the normalization of violence, and the way the war seeped into every corner of life, for soldier and civilian alike. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery streaks of orange and purple, Miller watched a medevac chopper lift off in the distance, a black silhouette against the dying light. He thought of the little boy, his wide, dark eyes, and the toy airplane he held. He thought of the RPG, now just another item on an inventory list. And for the first time since he'd arrived in Vietnam, Miller felt a profound sense of futility. He wondered what winning this war would even look like, and if in the end there would be anything left to win. Miller and his squad spent the rest of the evening in the muddy, cramped collection point. The air grew cooler, and the chirping of crickets replaced the hum of the daytime's chaos. They ate in silence, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of a single field lantern. The captured RPG, now just a tagged piece of ordnance, was a forgotten footnote in the day's grim accounting. Later, huddled under a poncho to escape the dew, Miller couldn't sleep. He thought of the young boy, his dark, impassive eyes, and the woman who had pulled him back. He had carried a symbol of destruction out of their home, but what did that mean? Did it make them safer? Did it bring the war any closer to an end? The questions were a weight in his gut, heavier than any grenade. The next morning they were on a resupply convoy heading back to base. As the trucks rumbled down a rutted dirt road, Miller watched the landscape go by, endless rice paddies, quiet villages, and the thick, green jungle that hid so many secrets. He saw a few children playing by the side of the road, and for a moment he let himself imagine a different world, one where their eyes held no fear and their lives were not defined by the shadow of war. He knew that was a fantasy. The RPG wasn't just a weapon. It was a symptom of a deeper wound. The war wasn't a series of battles. It was a slow, painful erosion of innocence, a conflict that left its mark on everything it touched. He thought of the boy, the grenade, and the quiet dignity of the woman who had said nothing. He carried those images with him. A new kind of baggage, heavier than his rifle, more burdensome than his gear. Back at base, life would return to a routine of patrols, guard duty, and the endless cycle of waiting. But for Miller, something had fundamentally shifted. The war was no longer just about survival or duty. It was about the things he had found and the things he had taken away. And in the quiet moments, he would forever remember the day he carried a captured RPG, and in doing so, carried a small piece of a child's lost childhood.